Breaking overnight, President Trump says India will buy more than $3 billion in advanced military equipment from the U.S., including helicopters. The president announcing the deal on his second day of a three-day trip to India. We have Tori Smith, the trade economist at the Heritage Foundation, with us now. Tori, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Were you hoping for perhaps a bigger trade deal with India?
Well, here's the thing, that the deal that's announced today is really on the security side of the relationship. There were some rumors that we might have a bilateral deal between the U.S. and India that is really a reinstitution of trade preference program benefits for India, but unfortunately that seems to have fallen through, at least for the moment. And this is really characterized by the fact that Ambassador Bob Lighthizer is not on this trip.
One of the good pieces of news we got was the Lockheed Martin news, Tori, out of this, and their agreement to buy fighter jets. And look, I mean, the potential sale of $1.8 billion in arms to India is quite a coup for the business community in general.
Absolutely. It should not be discounted whatsoever, but this really has nothing to do with the broader trade tensions between the U.S. and India. And those are really in regards to things like agricultural barriers to entry, high tariffs on things like Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and investment barriers, as well as intellectual property issues.
Do you see any of those impediments because of this warm and welcoming relationship between Modi and Trump? Do you see them calming down, and maybe we could be in a position to forge a bigger deal in the future?
Hopefully. I mean, trade with India is always difficult because of the high barriers to entry there. So it's just a relationship that needs to improve over time, and these are not issues that can be fixed overnight. So hopefully we'll see some resolution, but really the most important thing is that we want to see a resolution where India gets their generalized system of preferences, their tariff preference benefits reinstated, because it represents billions of dollars worth of trade and imports from India annually.
And also, Tori, a big topic obviously between those two leaders over these last 2 days, whether it was public or not, has got to be China. I mean, India and United States, they do share their concern about the domination of China on the global stage. And with the coronavirus now such a big story, obviously there is bigger concern about the fact you've got so much manufacturing based in China. I think this is good for India. What do you say?
Well, I think really the long-term effects of the coronavirus issue are to be seen. There's definitely a slowdown in China related to this, and we'll see what comes in the future. In the meantime, I think that the Phase 1 deal with China is going forward as planned at this point.
What about Phase 2?
Phase 2, I think, is to be seen. We'll see. I think we're going to be looking at probably 2021 before we see any movement on that. And China is going to be especially delayed in their ability to negotiate Phase 2 with this virus outbreak.
Well, to your point, Secretary Mnuchin was in Riyadh yesterday, and he was asked about this by Reuters, and he said at this point, Phase 1 will not be impacted by the coronavirus outbreak. But then he said Phase 2, give us a few weeks. And I thought that was interesting. He's usually a little more literal than that, but he said, give us a few weeks to kind of figure out where this is going. I don't think they know.
I think that's correct. And really the positive thing here is that we have a cool down on U.S.-China trade tensions, which is great for Americans, and the prospect for positive relationship in the future.
Tori, as businesses look at the situation now, the tariffs with China, now the coronavirus, if they were thinking about moving a supply chain out of China, does that happen now, particularly because of the virus?
I think that these are long-term plans that have to happen. We've already seen some movement of production out of China to other countries in Southeast Asia, and maybe even to South America, Mexico, and some back to the United States. I think that you'll continue to see that trend happen, and that is related to the trade tensions and probably not as much related to coronavirus. I would imagine those companies are probably thanking themselves for making those decisions earlier, though.
Tori Smith from the Heritage Foundation. Tori, thank you for standing by with us for this hour.